Hello again, everybody, and welcome to my Deep Wreck Diver YouTube channel. Loads and loads of people were fascinated by the interview I did a few weeks ago with Richie Kohler about the incredible exploits he's had on the Britannic. I'm really pleased that he's really kindly agreed to release some more footage of his adventures. And this footage has never been seen before online, so it's fantastic. And I want to thank you so much, Richie, for doing this and for showing what you've got to everyone.
Well, let's give props where a lot of the footage is from the team, not just myself. So you've got to thank Simon Mills, the owner of the Shipwreck. He's our partner, if you will, in a lot of these videos that we took. I got to thank Barry McGill, Stewie Andrews, obviously Evan Kovacs, my wife, Katie, Eduardo Pavia, Richard Stevenson, Perry Brandis, and George Vandros. I think that's everybody. I don't think I forgot anybody. Those are the guys that we have to thank for all of this footage and for allowing me to share it with you. I am going to give a caveat. We are showing you guys some footage, stills and video that haven't been seen publicly before. And I know you guys want more, but I'm going to just start out by saying we're hoping to get this film into a documentary. So we're holding back a lot of the really good stuff, but I think you're going to be happy with what we're going to share today.
Oh, I can absolutely guarantee that. Having seen it, obviously I've had a bit of an exclusive preview, and I know the stuff that we've got here is really, really good. And I can only imagine how good the good stuff is, because this is pretty awesome, Richie. So shall we crack on then, and let's have a look. Got for us starts off with some guys going down the shot line here.
Yeah, if we just get down to the rusty bits right away, it's nice to see that big blue water. So here you are. That's the very tip of the bow, or actually, I believe that's a funnel. I apologize. Nope, that was the tip of the bow. I should put my glasses on. So we're at the tip of the bow now. You see the anchor up in the hawse pipe, and some of these are exterior photos. Right there, you can see, I don't know if you know what that is. I'm sure you do, but that's the crow's nest bell sitting upright in a little bit of clearing around it to see the shape more clearer. And this is an idea, again, of that incredible visibility. It can be dark down there, but, it's not uncommon to get 30, 40 meter visibility, as we're seeing here. One of the things I like when we travel outside the wreck is obviously with your lights on, the colors that just pop out at you and the scale. Obviously, as you know, we can never have enough light. And here's a good example. That's Baza, Barry McGill. You can always tell by those iconic fins of his about to enter into an area inside the shipwreck. And here's some areas, showing medical, that's medical supply box. In this video clip, you'll see the remains of a oil or gas lamp and other things that are just laying where they fell, so many years ago. So what we're looking at now is the shot had landed out in the sand, and Evan and I are swimming over to the wreck. And what you're looking at on the seafloor is a mound of shell. It's like these oyster shells that have grown, lived and died, and then fell and made a mound that you have to swim over. And so below me in this shot is the seafloor, and I am about to rise up into the promenade. So right now I'm going through a window opening, and bang, I am now on the lower or starboard side promenade deck, where those Victorian nurses and doctors, those wounded soldiers and sailors walked along these very decks. The wood's gone. What you're looking at down there is just the caulking that's there. So this is now a shot of Evan taking of me. I'm setting the strobe back there. You can actually see me setting a strobe, because we're going to actually go in through this doorway, and we find ourselves in a small baking area. What we're looking at through one of those doors is actually a range. You will see a stove in a minute, and right there's a sink in front of me, and there's a stove, and then like a turtle, I pop up into the scene here through the doorway. You can see some of the cabinetry on the wall there, and it's just gives you that idea of what's going on. And here we are on the low side of the wreck, looking through the entirety, the 100 feet or 30 meters up and looking out another window on the port side. That was what that light was right there. Gives you an idea of how expansive these open wardroom areas are. Evan's shining his light down in here. That is one of the areas where the elevators were. This is him and I going down a long corridor, which I nicknamed the hallway of death. I did that because of all of the cables that were hanging down as we're swimming through here. You see all those cables? It's like we are actually swimming and just kind of going back and forth around these cables as we're going down this long, long corridor. This is one of those instances where there wasn't supposed to be a watertight bulkhead. There was supposed to be a doorway, and there wasn't one. The camera angle now is shifted to a different area. This is now what we call Scotland Road. This is absolutely one of my favorite dives. It was, once again, true pioneering, true exploration. Evan's in the lead on this dive, and because there's no line on the bulkhead to his right, that's how I know this is the actual original footage of that area. So yeah, that's that would bring us into the engine room. Unfortunately, I can't show you any of the engine room footage. Simon has asked that we kind of hold on to that because even on Titanic, there is no known footage of an intact Olympic class engine room. And so that footage for us is, you know, kind of the real thing that we want to be able to share with a media group so that we have an exclusive for them to make a documentary film. So this is Scotland Road on the way out of the engine room. And I am poking my camera up into, this is me because Evan is on his way out. I poke my camera up into this room, and to the left you can see a electrical switchboard of some type, breakers. And then when I finally get my bearing and I'm able to swing my camera in the right perspective, you're going to see what's called the engineer's mess. You can see this beautiful tile floor and the remains of tables, the wardroom tables that the engineers would seat at to take their, you know, their meals and stuff like this. As Evan and I exit down Scotland Road and then come back up to head out the E shell deck door, I look in this one room and I'm amazed to see, as you're going to see in a second, the only printing press on board Britannic. And, you know, it's kind of surprising because on some of the blueprints, this was supposed to be a potato storage room. So when I shined my light in there and I didn't see any potatoes, you know how hungry I get underwater, I was shocked to see this. And that is, believe it or not, a turn of the century printing press that they would use on Britannic to make the daily menus and whatever they needed printed. So now the film has gone back to the area of the grand staircase that was part of the skylight dome you saw. And then for a brief moment, we were looking at a little bit more of that china. And this is what it looks like when Evan and I are exiting the wreck, again, from that very low position, leaving the promenade. I'm at 120 meters here. And our shot had landed probably 20 meters away out in the sand. So we tied it off to a funnel, and that's why you see me coming out and sand. And we talked about this in our last video, that where the shot lands dictates your dive profile. On that dive profile, I had to go to 120 meters. But if the shot had landed on top of the wreck, well, then I got away with, 95 meters. So, and here's those shots of the most important people in the dive team, which in this case is the support divers. You can see Katy right there is the support diver on this project. And taking away our deep bailout, there's the Starfish Enterprise deco station, which is obviously paramount to safety and comfort for us during these long decos. And again, as I mentioned, because I saw the potato room, I get hungry on decos, so I've been known to have a little snack here and there. And I think that's Evan giving us a goodbye because he was the primary shooter on this. So now we're up at the bow, and what we're about to do is we went through the Fireman's Tunnel, which Richie Stevenson found way back, I think like in 99 or maybe 2006 or something like that. And what we actually are in the boiler room number 6 here, and you can see the catwalks above us. And what we're about to do is try to move in between the two boilers so that we can get to the aft side of the compartment and then gain access to the next door to the next compartment. So this is a film clip that was given to us by Simon for allowing you guys to get an idea of how stagnant the environment is, how tight everything is in the boiler rooms. They did not have us technical divers in mind when they designed the boiler rooms on these ships. But the bright spot is, again, the wreck is so intact. Here's an artist's rendering of what it would look like, what we were doing and going through those boilers. So you get an idea of which way we would be going to get to the watertight doors. It looks a lot nicer in this cartoon image than it does in the real dive footage for obvious reasons. But I think that we've got a couple of great still shots too of some of the equipment in there that had never been seen before. Furnace indicators, as well as gauges, instructions, bronze plaques that have, in English, of course. There you can see one of the furnace indicators. This is the top side of it with a little cage lamp right there, and it's covered with silt. But when we get underneath it and we kind of look up, you can actually read what it says. And I know that we have another still image of that. So you're looking, and there it is. You can see what that furnace indicator looks like. So above each of the boilers would be one of these furnace indicators that would let the firemen know whether or not they should light that boiler. So when that would light up, that would indicate that the engineer needs you to bring more boilers online. They need more steam. And if they were slowing down, then they would shut them off and damp them up. And so it's incredible because there are no historical photos of these compartments. At the time that they were built, it wasn't considered important to, take the photograph of the inside of a Greyhound bus engine. If you look at it the way that they must have looked at it then, this was just commonplace equipment. But here we are over 100 years later, elated to see these fixtures still in place. And for people like you and I who dive shipwrecks that have been broken to pieces, and we may see some of these pieces twisted into the wreckage, it's really important that you know the context of what they are and how they operated and what they did.
Let's have a look at what we got here. So tell us what this is, Richie.
So a couple of years back in 23, Barry McGill and Stewie Andrews were tasked with trying to find a way into a kitchen pantry area, and they succeeded. I mean, look at this. These are piles of second-class Bradford pattern crockery that, I mean, there's literally hundreds of pieces of crockery, not just here, but on the other side of this and on other shelves. It's just stacked up. Yet when you realize that Britannic had the capability of carrying over 3,000 people on board that had to have a couple of meals a day, think about all the crockery they had to have on board. But I think the really important thing about this particular video and this particular find is that we were trying to prove that some of Britannic's more illustrious, opulent history or pedigree was still on board. And the finding of the second-class Bradford pattern china, Bradford pattern, I think is the proper pronunciation, proves that there were things that directly relate to, let's say, Titanic and the White Star Line. Although she was conscripted and outfitted for war and turned into a hospital ship, these items still harken back to what she was designed to be, a beautiful passenger liner.
Absolutely. You've recovered some of these plates, haven't you, Richie? I've seen pictures of them.
That is correct. We were ultimately given permission by the ship's owner and, of course, by the Efrit, the Greek Efrit, the Ministry of Antiquities, to recover not just some of these dishes, but they wanted a very varied selection of crockery We recovered these dishes. We recovered cups. We recovered chamber pots. We recovered silverware. We recovered a sink. We recovered various food storage containers, as well as other items that directly hint towards her mission as a hospital ship.
Fantastic. And these identical plates to this were on the Titanic, correct?
That's my understanding, is that this was, all of them have on the back of it the White Star line, and on the center crest is the Oceanic Steamship and Navigation Company logo, which is the same as saying the White Star Line. It was the predecessor of the White Star Line. So these are really rare. My understanding is that there's a few out there, and they can actually be found on other White Star liners as well. But I think the most important aspect of them is that they weren't removed from Britannic. And so that leads us to think, well, what else is on board Britannic that has a direct connection to her pedigree as a passenger liner?
And I think that might move us on to, here we go, another area I think of kind of interest.
Okay, so again, deep inside the wreck, we located not one, but a number of pantry areas. And this is another video. Thank you, Simon Mills, for us being able to share it. So that's my wife, Katy. And as you can see, she's got her collection bag. And from this area, we collected those bean pots. We collected some other bits of crockery. But one of the most significant things that came out of this was, you've got experienced wreck divers, Richie Kohler, Barry McGill, Evian Kovacs, Stewie Andrews. All of us go in this room. We're wowed by all the crockery. My wife goes in this room, sees the binoculars. 5 guys swam over them, just totally like kids in a candy store, looking at all the good stuff. And she found this one iconic item, which, by the way, she was asked by the antiquities people, the archaeologists, to recover it. And so not only did she get to be the person who found the binoculars, but she was the one who, in this video clip, we're not showing you the actual recovery, but that's what she's about to do, is to recover those binoculars, which was pretty cool.
I'm just going to put it out there. A question for you as well, Richie. How many women have done what Katy is doing here? Gone deep inside Britannic.
Katy follows in a very small footstep of women. Polly Tapson, Christina Campbell, Brits. The first women were Brits to dive Britannic. I can guarantee she's the first American woman to ever go inside. So there's an honor in that. But you know what? I don't think any of us do it to get in the Guinness World Book of Records. That ain't what any of us are doing this for. It's nice when you get recognized by your peers that you're doing some really cool or important work. And for her, as a woman, to be, as you mentioned, in an arena that's predominantly, not all, there's a lot of women doing some really great technical diving out there. I could drop names off the top of my head right now: Jill Heinrich, Becky Kagan, Sabine Kirkow, just to name a few right off the top of my head, that are doing some really, really technical dives, deep dives, important cave diving, shipwreck diving, etc., and making a difference. But they're, smaller in number to us bald-headed blokes. You're absolutely right. So when you see, Katy knocking it out of the park, and like I said, in one way, outshining the boys. She saw something we didn't see, and believe me, she's not going to let us forget it.
I think the last thing that we're going to share now, Richie, which is some of the pictures. So there we go. Let's start off with that one then.
So, when people ask how intact is she, this is one picture that really drives it home. This is not an incredibly stagnant area. There's water flow through here. But when you look at it and you see these toilets still mounted to the floor and the linoleum in place, it kind of looks like it just needs a little dust up, yeah? And you're ready to do your business. So yeah, it's like you don't see this in shipwrecks that often. And So you're out of direct sunlight, of course, and you're out of a heavy flow. That's why there's no marine growth in here. But at the same time, there's great visibility, as you can see from the photo. And this is just one of many areas that are incredible because they're so intact.
Here we go. Tell us about this one. I know you're particularly proud. You're particularly pleased with this shot.
People always ask me, like, what's one of your favorite dives? And I'm going to say, well, in the last 5 years, two of my favorite dives, this is one of them. This is probably my favorite, is like, I wanted to, from the first time that I ever saw the open door on the side of the ship that entered into E deck, I always wondered about that door, because the door opens inward, and that means that it was most likely, actually definitely, used by the engineers who escaped from the engine room. So when the all clear, abandoned ship went, but the men had to stay in the engine room and keep the steam up and keep the power supplied, because the hydraulics and the electronic winches needed to launch the lifeboats. Once that was done, once all of the nurses and doctors and crew, unessential crew, was off, the engine, the black gang, these guys down in the engine room now had to get out. They had a choice. They can climb. Can you imagine climbing 6 or 7 of those decks to climb up to get out, and then on a leaning or listing ship, and then have to climb down the side? Nope. These guys weren't stupid. They came up 1 or 2 deck levels, and then they got on E deck, and they ran down Scotland Road, and they opened the shell door, and they just jumped right into the ocean. And that's how these guys escaped. So for me and Evan to go in that door, swim to the center line of the ship, go forward about 30 meters, and enter into this room, seeing this was the highlight. It was one of my best dives, best memories. We were hooting and hollering. And as I mentioned to you before we started filming this, when you look at this image, this is in every way, in every shape and form, a playground for the technical diver. It is just like what we here in America call a jungle gym, where, little children climb all over things. But, well, we're not climbing on it, but we're swimming through not 1, not 2, but 7 of these decks with catwalks and ladders and stairwells. And on the port side, or in this perspective, we're looking aft. So that column is the center line of the ship. And to my right is the port engine, which is still bolted in place with all of the steam pipes, all of the fittings, all of the oilers, gauges that you can still read, electrical fuse boxes. And then, of course, on the starboard side, same thing, starboard engine, still in place. And it's mind-boggling, because I've been diving shipwrecks most of my adult life, and I use adult, with air quotes, but I've never seen an intact engine room from a naturally occurring shipwreck, not a ship that was sunk on purpose, of course. I'm talking about a 100-year-old victim of disaster. We never see this, ever. And so to have this opportunity, we were elated. We had no idea what we would find. We didn't know if all of these catwalks would have rotted away and fallen to the seafloor inside the wreck. We didn't know if the engines collapsed. But to see everything intact like this was wonderful. And I think it's also important, and goes back to why it was so important that Simon Mills and the Greek effort did allow us to document this, because one day this photo and the videos will be all that's left, because we know this is not going to stay like that forever. There's going to be a day the engine's going to break free, and it's going to fall down, and all this will be gone. Another thing that's a little interesting techie thing, the engine rooms on the White Star liners, these engine spaces, were the largest individual compartmentalized space on a ship prior to the advent of the aircraft carriers. So when aircraft carriers came into play, all of a sudden they had a requirement for having a much larger area in between watertight bulkheads. Because when you think about it, this is one of the largest single compartmentalized rooms, if you will. Yes, it's filled with machinery and stuff, but you're still in one of the largest interior rooms of a ship that had ever been built at that point. Okay, now we're going to get into scary stuff. So then this is the second favorite dive. So for many years, going back all the way to 2006, locating this room, which is called the Turkish baths, which is basically a steam room, which again hints back to the fact that this was not just a hospital ship. She was actually an opulent passenger liner. And so opulent passenger liners have things like swimming pools and steam rooms. Well, this was a Victorian steam room. And what we're looking at is the tiles in what's called the cooling room. Now, in 2006, I didn't even know about these things, and I was becoming educated by people like Simon Mills and Park Stevenson, and they really wanted to know if this room existed on Britannic. And so in 2006, 2009, 2015, guys were being tasked with trying to find a way in, and everyone was telling us that the way was blocked, it collapsed, there was no way to get into that. And so in 2023, Evan and I decided to take another look. We had never actually looked. We had trusted other people that had been tasked, but had never found the way in. And I said, you know what, Evan, why don't we try something a little different? And everybody prior to us had always gone to the very lowest side of the wreck and then tried to find their way in that way. I said, why don't we do it the way the passengers would go? Well, let's act like we're going down the staircase and follow the staircase. So in other words, we looked at it from a diving perspective in an unconventional way, where from a diving perspective, you would probably want to take the shortest path. We actually took a little bit of a longer path, and yet it brought us to an intact hallway. And at the end of that hallway was a door, and there was a balustrade from the grand staircase laying across this doorway. And immediately I just looked at Evan. I'm like, oh my God, that's it. That's the door. And we understood why everyone else never found it, was because they would come in too low and they would be on the wrong side of the stairwell. And long story short, Evan, we're going to show you a couple of more images, but Evan went in. He was the first person in. I followed him in. And these two images capture what is probably one of the most intact areas because of how anaerobic it is. This shot that he took, what you're looking at is, to your right is the floor. Above you, that is the portside wall, and you're looking straight back to a doorway that would lead to a hall that would then give you an option to go through a watertight door to the swimming pool or to the actual steam rooms. And so what you're looking at is wood frames with concrete and tiles still embedded in the ceiling and on the walls around you. Well, when I say the ceiling, I mean a wall. That's a wall, but now it's a ceiling. So these tiles are above your head, and the wood frames are there. As you can look, you're seeing the wood framework of doorways and walls, and you can see the remains of the chase lounges. And it's like nowhere else can you see wood inside the shipwreck. So you realize that there's no oxygen in this environment, and that any decay has been arrested because no microbes, nothing can live with no oxygen. And then that pea green, that ghostly haze, that's the best it ever was. No one had ever been in this room, and that's the best condition of visibility we'd ever seen in it. And subsequent dives to go in there have never been any better than this. So, and as of course you can see, there's wires hanging down and all the boogeyman stuff that you really don't want to do and know about, and that's the doorway, that's the hallway that we found. And at the bottom of it, you can see that all around it, the silt has been ramped up. In other words, 100 years of silt has created a mound against the walls, and silt obviously has fallen through the doorway. But the problem is that as a diver tries to slip in or does slip into that very narrow opening, you have to get rid of one of your bailouts. You're never going to fit in there with two bailouts. You've got to take your other one and slip it around, hold your camera over your head, feet first in, and then I follow Evan down, and then I usually would go in and hang at the doorway and be his lighthouse, if you will, his breadcrumb, so that when the visibility goes to all heck, there's a hand in the doorway to help get you out through that doorway. Because when he comes out, you can't see the doorway. There's just a cascade of silt coming down, zeroing out the visibility. You only know where the door is because there's just a cloud of chocolate milk. So you have to go into the rust-colored chocolate milk and then kind of braille your way out. And if you have, like we do, a system, you have a buddy that's in the doorway that's there to help you fit through, take your camera, get you out of the room. And Evan's pretty adept at it. So a lot of these images, I believe that might be a still grab from my GoPro, but the images that you saw inside the Turkish baths are, again, these images that you're looking at are all in Simon Mills's book. And if you want to, you want to see more, you need to get a copy of this book, because that's where these are coming from. These are all in Simon's book that we took. Obviously, the video is some stuff that we're kind of holding on to. As I said earlier, we really want to be able to give a media client the ability to have the premiere, if you will, of these images of us being the very first people to get into these rooms. But these still images, I think, also convey to the diving audience exactly what it is we're seeing, where we're going, and what it's all about.
And I have to say, Richie, it's absolutely incredible of Simon to allow us to use a load of the images and everything. And for those of you who want to see more of them, then there's a link in the description to Simon's book. And I'd encourage anybody who's interested in the Britannic. I mean, it's got to be a must-have for them, I think. The other thing I'd just like to say, obviously, is a big thanks to you, Richie, for coming on and taking the time to talk us through this and to show us all the amazing videos and the amazing images. What I would also say is, on our various social media channels, we said to people, if you have any questions for Richie, then he would answer them. And you've probably noticed that hasn't happened in this video. There is another video, once again, that I'm going to link. It'll be up here somewhere and down here, that will be where that happens. But other than that, I just want to say a massive thank you, Richie. And for everybody out there, hopefully, please do all the usual stuff: like, subscribe, leave a comment, say thank you to Richie, and of course go and do exactly the same on his YouTube channel as well. I'm sure he'll really appreciate that. Other than that, thank you all, and I hope to see you on the next video.